Hello, how are you? So today we continue with lecture 3, research methodology, qualitative approach. As we have been discussed previously that there is two types of research. One is quantitative, one is qualitative. I would like to start with qualitative first approach. Then after we continue our all lectures based on the quantitative. So in inductive logic research, usually most use qualitative studies. Here, which is different from the quantitative approach. As I have explained that quantitative approach goes from top to down or from general to specific. But in inductive or qualitative, we go the way around where we start with specific and go to general, means that from the bottom to the top. So basically, in doing inductive logic research in qualitative studies, first you as a researcher, you start gathering information. After, for example, you observe a phenomenon, you start observing that phenomenon and gathering information as much as you can by asking open-ended question of participant or record field notes. Then you analyze the data, and here we come to form what we call themes or categories, which is as we call in quantitative variables or construct, but in qualitative we call them themes and categories. Then after, you look for a broad patterns, generalizations, or theories from theme or categories. If you are able to find that patterns, or what we call them regularities, then here you will be able to develop what we call tentative hypothesis, and therefore you will develop later your theory, or you can say the generalizations is made. After that, you may also review the literature review. Note here, in inductive qualitative research, literature review are discussed at the end of the research when you will find your result or conclusion. The reason for that is to see how your finding matching or in line with what we know previously, and the second to make sure that your research was not driven by a prior knowledge. So qualitative research, different assumption or approaches than quantitative, as we explained. It emphasizes on seeing the world from the eye of the participant. So the participant or respondent are your eyes. They tell you the stories, they tell you their experiences. So you as a researcher, you should not interfere. Strive to make sense of phenomena in terms of the meaning people bring to them, how they experience the experience. For example, you want to study about culture of a particular group. So those people will tell you about that culture, and you gather that information to come out with a conclusion. A holistic emphasis studying the person, a group, culture in the natural setting. Means that if you want to study the person or group or culture, of a particular people, you need to go to their natural setting where they live, where they experience. If you want to study earthquake or how people cope with earthquake, you must go to where the earthquake was happened, took place, and you study there. You cannot just stay in your office and call those people by your phone and say, what they are experiencing. So here I give you the difference between the two approaches, quantitative and qualitative. You see, in quantitative is something which is very straightforward. As I say, we go from the general one. So we define the research problem, we survey literature review in order to see what people are doing, what they have done, what they have not done. We already explained that in previous lecture. Then also you will see the theories. After that, you formulate your hypothesis. That is the general idea. Then after you have formulate your hypothesis, you make operational definition for your variables or constructs. Then you decide about your design, and select the instrument of the data, and obtain the ethical approval if necessary. You go to the field, collect the data, analyze the data, then do the discussion, interpretation of the finding, and refer to literature review again if your finding is matching against or similar to previous studies and theories. Then you will come to a conclusion. Straightforward. But for the qualitative, it's something different. Once you select the social content and research, let's say you want to study about personality or whatever, then here you start narrowing or formulating what is the problem, and also explicate your belief, how we call it bracketing. So the first thing that you need to do is to collect the data. So you have to obtain the ethical approval. Then after that, you will select your participant. Who are your participant? Then you collect the data. Okay, so you collect the data here. Then while collecting the data in the same time, which is different from here first you finish collecting data, then analyzing. Here no, here while collecting the data in the same time you're analyzing. Once you find that some more information need to be explained, you go back to the field. So in the same time, collecting the data, analyzing, collecting, analyzing, collecting, analyzing, until you feel that is enough. How we know? Here in quantitative, we decide about the sample size. We have population, how much, then we decide based on a formula sample size. But here no. You will stop until you reach the level of saturation. Means that when you interview more people, you will gather no new information. So they just repeat what they have said previously or what our previous people were saying. Then you will know that you are not going to anymore to collect any new information. So here the data collection and analysis will stop. Then you go to the concept formation and modification in order to develop the tentative hypothesis, and that must be, as I say, you must come out or find out the regularities or the patterns. So after that, you may not find that patterns. You go back here and collect the data, analyze, collect the data, and goes back again. So if you feel that the patterns are there, regularities are there, something is frequently repeated, you will establish your scientific rigors of finding. So when you try to explain those relationship between the teams and between the categories, if you could establish the scientific proof of your hypothesis and theory development, then you can continue to literature review to see and compare. But if you cannot establish it, and this is what will happen most of the time, you go back again to the empirical or collect the data, analyze data, analyze data, analyze. So it's like a circle until you satisfy. You go back the same here, find the regularities and the pattern, and develop the hypothesis or the theory. After once you do it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, you will establish your scientific finding. Then you go to literature review, compare what have been studied previously or what have been investigated with your finding. Then you come out with a conclusion and you write your final report. So in qualitative is a little bit consuming more time and needs a lot of complications compared to quantitative. So what are the core activities in qualitative research? As I say, we have literature review. Of course, we don't start by it, but it will be somewhere here. So explicating researcher belief, the role of participant, they are the subject or the informant. So if they are subject, that means you are studying them. If they are informant, you are studying a phenomenon, but they will inform you about that phenomenon. So you select the participant, then set in for data collection, then you analyze and you compare with literature review. So we start with literature review. As I say, conducted after data have been collected and analyzed. Not like in quantitative literature review, we do it before we collect the data because we will be based on literature review to develop our theoretical framework. So we will go from general to specific. Here is different. We come from specific to general. So this literature review first, we analyze data, then only we go and see the literature review. The rationale for delaying literature review is, as I say, to avoid leading the participant in direction of what has been discovered. Because when you read literature review, you may interfere and ask questions that in nature are leading those participants to somewhere which has been already discovered. And also, the purpose of literature review is to show how current findings fit into what is already known. So this is the two things that you have to remember. Second, explicating researchers' belief. Bracketing means that setting aside one's bias and personal views on a topic. Means what you believe, it should not be interfered in the informant or in people believing. So you as an investigator, you should keep a diary of personal thought and feeling about the topic. That you should not, and as I say, interfere, and you should not drive responded to what you believe. So that keep it for yourself. You have to be as much as you can objective. Otherwise, you will be biased. So the purpose, the researcher is made aware when interpretations of the data reflect personal belief rather than those of participants. So you may, when you collect the data and start analyzing, think that A is positive because of B and C. But actually, that's what you believe. Respondent never say that. So you make sure that you don't do that. You don't do that in qualitative or in inductive. So who are the subject or the informant? People being studied are viewed as participant or informant, not as subject. A subject is something or a phenomenon, like an earthquake. So people who are interviewing are informant or participant to tell you about the earthquake. So viewed as an active participant in research who inform you or inform the researcher about their culture, about their experience. And researcher also seek to understand the participant cultural knowledge, hence requires learning about participant culture through an ongoing discussion and involvement with them. So I want to emphasize here that you as a researcher, when you do this type of research, especially in cultural context or setting, you need to live with them, you need to learn their language, eat with them, and you are observing the culture. So the method is called purposive sampling, where the participant must have first-hand experience with the research topic. For example, homeless or gang, involvement, attending a medical school, and they must be able to talk about it. You cannot just ask someone, for example, you talk about homeless. You cannot ask someone that he has friend is homeless and tell him about experience. You must go midnight to the street, for example, and find those homeless people and interview them. So you as a researcher establishes a clear criteria and rationale for the sample selection. So you have to justify your sample, as I say. So the goal is not generalization of finding, but a rich description of a phenomenon by those who have experienced it. So your goal is not just to get information that can be generalized, but make sure that you have to collect as much as you can data or information so that allow you for a rich description of that phenomena, that you can describe that particular phenomena from different angles. So informant driven rather than theory driven. So in this type of research, qualitative or inductive qualitative research, uh, you are driven by the informant, by the respondent, not by the theory or literature review. And this is another reason, as we say, that why literature review should be at the end. Because if you start with literature review, you may be driven by that theory or by that knowledge. So investigator assumes ignorance of the culture or experience being studied. Informant teaches the investigator. You assume that you don't know anything about what you're going to study. Let the informant or the participant teach you, tell you about that particular phenomena or culture. Also, the data collected in the field, the natural world where people live and experience life, just now as I explained it, you should go to them, learn the language, eat their food, discuss with them. So this investigator should be non-intrusive and spend a prolonged time in the field. It's not like a qualitative, you can assign some of your research assistant to do it and it will be very fast. Here you spend a lot of time, could be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Some researchers use multiple methods, means they mix a lot of methods like interview with focus group discussion, and that we will discuss later about that. In terms of data analysis, you as researchers immerse self in data to bring order and meaning to a vast narrative. So you have to come to truly understand what the data are saying. And you cannot, as I say, interfere in that interpretation. So you should interpret the data the way that the informant told you, not the way that you believe. And here we come to this cyclical process where the data occurs simultaneously with data analysis, as I showed you just now in the graph. So analysis begins when the data collection begins. So you start reading, and rereading, intuiting, then analyzing, synthesizing, and reporting on the data. So sometimes also called theoretical sampling, collect data until saturation is reached, and I also explain it into graph when you feel that no new information is provided by informant, so that you know that this level of saturation. So generalization drawn from earlier interviews are returned to participants for clarification and elaboration. So once you are confused with some of the data or explanation that gathered, or you come to a general conclusion, you give back that to participants for more elaboration and classification. Ask them again what exactly they mean about that. And you should look for a meaning in the data as it is gathered, not look the meaning at as what previous research or literature have said about it, as the data say about that particular phenomenon. You should. So data similar in meaning are clustered together, and here we call it the categories. So when you're collecting the data, it's not like a numerical. This is words by words. So once you find similar meaning, you put them under one cluster and one umbrella, and we call it categories. For example, you want to study about poverty. Someone tell you, I don't have food. Someone tell you, I feel hungry. Someone say that I don't have money. Then you will know that is one umbrella is poverty. Those people are poor. Same meaning, I don't have food, I'm hungry, I can't go to school. For what reason? Because they don't have money. So data similar in meaning are clustered together, as I say, and put as categories, then requires an extensive amount of time. Yes, that. So if you have a huge amount of data, it's very difficult to do it manually. So we will have a software to help us, what we call, we have two famous software. One is NVivo and one is Atlas TI. But those software, they will not like other quantitative software like eViews and Smart PLS and SPSS. Those quantitative software, they will do for you the data analysis. But in qualitative, as Atlas TI and Vivo, they will just help you to manage your data. But actually, the analysis, the clustering, the categories, the team, the domain, you are the person who will be responsible for that to develop that. So we have three qualitative methods. So the first, ethnography. And here, when you want to study, or the study focus more on culture or cultural groups. So you describe a culture or cultural group, how they live, what they believe. And here the discipline is cultural anthropology. So here, if an example of that, you want to study Orang Asli here in Malaysia, about their culture. So you have to go to their place and do a study on that. Then we have the grounded theory, and it is from the name you will know that it's about the theory development. The cultural also could be cultural group. Here you generate a theory about a basic social process. And it's a discipline like sociology, symbolic, interaction, criminology. And the last is the phenomenology, and which is the most easier if you compare to the first and second. But here you don't study about cultural group, but you study about individual experience, where you discern the essence of a lived experience. As I tell you, homeless, earthquake, yeah. So you will investigate those individual experiences. So here we can find in philosophy, psychology, sociology, social science. So we start with the first one, anthropology. So it's focused on study on human behavior in the cultural context in which it is embedded, as I just explained just now. Ethnography is the work of describing a culture, the way of life of a cultural group, were associated with cultural anthropology. Example here, David Count and Dorothy Ayer Count. They have a study of ethnography of RVing seniors. RVing those, houses like van, and attached to a car, and they can, move and live like freely whatever. Today they are in Kampar, tomorrow in Ipoh. So he want to study about the seniors retired, that they live that life. So ethnography, also we can say it is an approach to qualitative research, also come from largely from the field of ethnography or anthropology. The emphasis is in ethnography is to study entire culture. Originally, actually the idea of a culture was tied to the notion of ethnicity and geographic location. For example, the culture of, as I say, Orang Asli, but it has been broadened later to include virtually any group of organization. So even you can study it now about companies. That is, we can also study the culture of a business or a defined group. Ethnography is also an extremely broad area with a great variety of participants and methods. But you should know also the most common ethnographic approach is participant observation. So you yourself, you go and observe when you study about this type of the culture. You can interview also, but most important, the observation is very important. So this participant observation as a part of the field research, you as an ethnographer becomes immersed in the culture as an active participant. You yourself you become as an active participant and record extensive field knowledge. So this is also a data collection. As in grounded theory, after we will see, there is no preset limiting of what will be observed and no real ending point in the ethnographic study. So you may take this for years to finish. So until, as I say, you come out to the level of saturation level or data saturation level. So the second is grounded theory, where the focus should be to develop a theory to explain underlying social process of a cultural group. And this is useful in area where little is known or when a new perspective is needed. Maybe we have theory, but that theory does not really explain that phenomenon in a way that we really understand the complexities between, the variables or between the constructs. Also used for exploratory descriptive studies because the theory emerges from the data, so that we call it a grounded theory. The foundation in symbolic interactionism. An example, Kerry, Daly, and the social construction of fatherhood. So this grounded theory is a qualitative also a research that was originally developed by Glasser and Strauss in 1960s. The self-defined purpose of grounded theory is to develop theory about phenomena of interest. But this is not just abstract theorizing they are talking about. Instead, the theory needs to be grounded or rooted in observation. So the grounded theory is a complex iterative process. You as a research, the research began with the rising of generative questions which help you to guide and to guide you, but those questions are not intended to be either static or confining. So as a researcher, you must begin to gather data and then a core theoretical concept will be defined. So after you collect the data, as I say, tentative linkages will be developed, or we call them tentative hypotheses, between the theoretical core concepts and the data. And here, in this early phase of the research, tend to be very open and can take months, years. So later, you as a researcher, you will be more engaged in verification and summary. As I say, after you will get these regularities or patterns, so the effort tends to evolve toward one core category that is the central, as I give an example here about just now about poverty. So you collected so many data, you put them in different categories, and after you find out, oh, so we are talking about poverty. So the third one is phenomenology. Here the focus to reveal the meaning of the lived experience from perspective of participant. So you describe the essence of lived experience. So essence, an element related to the true meaning of something that gives a common understanding to the phenomenon under study. So you convey with a descriptive language and drawn from a philosophy used across discipline. For example, here we have Sorchani, a phenomenological study of women or pre-adoptive experiences. So also phenomenology is sometimes considered as a philosophical perspective as well as an approach to qualitative methodology, as it has a long history in several social research disciplines, including psychology, sociology, and social work. So phenomenology also is a school of thought that emphasizes focus on people's subjective experiences and interpretation of the world. So you will understand the world or a phenomenon from the respondent perspective. That is, the phenomenologist wants to understand how the world appears to others. So this will be the three different methods. So how we collect the data collection method in qualitative studies, the three data collection strategies introduced here: participant observation, in-depth interviews, and focus group discussion. So qualitative researcher may combine more than one. You can use participant observation, while you observe and interview people. You can use interviewing people individually and with a group, focus group discussion. You can do three of them. So you can mix. So the first participant observation, you yourself, you observe. This is an intensive, usually long-term examination of social group and organization. So you as a researcher, you become as a participant also in the life of the group member. As just now I explained, if you want to study the culture of foreign athlete, you must go and live with them and observe. So most closely associated with ethnography as developed in classical anthropology. So the first method where we talk about ethnography is more suited for this, for field participant observation. Now done in a variety of disciplines, as I say, you can not only now it's not only about ethnography, but also in other disciplines. What are the steps involved in particular observation of the research? First, gaining entry to the group. You must know that there is sometimes formal, there is informal. So if you are interviewing formal organization like multinational companies, government agency, whatever, that require a formal entry. You mean that you have to draw a letter and a lot of people to be interviewed, permission. You maybe go, for example, to the prison to investigate about or to observe how prisoners live, for example. You need a formal entry. But informal group, different strategy are needed. This depends on you when you are this, observing a cultural group, but there is no formalities. You just may, for example, make friendship with someone, and it will help you to enter. So developing and maintaining rapport, you as a researcher must work hard to develop and maintain a good relationship in the field, because if you have not strong relationship, those respondents, they may not cooperate with you and may not give you most crucial information that need you to develop the theory or to bring that social or cultural investigation. So you should avoid all things that makes respondent angry, uncomfortable. You cannot laugh at their culture, criticize their culture, the way they eat, the way they talk, the way they dress. You should be one of them. I mean that you become like them. So developing a method for taking field notes. The field notes integral to participant observation. Here you include description and interpretation of individuals, interactions, and events. Distinguish description from interpretation. When you describe something as you have seen it or as participants tell you, and between when you interpret it. Then record a time and location of observation where you have observed that, or where you have done that interviews, as well as the key informant, whether the event happening and their significance, how much the event, when the weather, or the event happened is significant or significant. That will help you also for data analysis. Integrating data collection, data analysis, organizing the field node into different types of files, facilitate data analysis. So you have to organize your field node, because when you put them in different files, let's say this is about A, this is about B, when you come to analyze the data, it comes to you very easy to go back and search those files. The second, we call the in-depth interviews, which is totally different from the observation. Here you are going to interview people. Some studies cannot employ the participant observation method, so we go to in-depth interviews. In-depth interviews allow participants to describe their experiences and the meaning of the event taking place in their lives. You remember, those participants or those people we are going to interview, they must really live that experience. So interviews are flexible and allow for probing. So interviews method is quite diverse and adaptive, which is same like a questionnaire, but the questionnaire people just tick what about your question, but in interviews you will ask open-ended questions and respondent will freely respond to that. Sometimes they will give you information that you even did not think of it. Spryly, it's a book in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, say that there are three key elements for the interview method to be successful. First, explicit purpose, where the researcher and informant are aware that the discussion has a purpose. Means that you cannot just go and interview those informant or those participants without telling them what is the purpose of the study. They should know about it. Ethnographic explanation, where the researcher tries out explanation on the participant to see if they make sense. So here you encourage the informant to use colloquial language or dialogue or slang, and teach the researcher its meaning. The informant will teach the researcher about a particular slang or about particular words. Also, ethnographic question includes descriptive question, where you ask participants to describe their experience, for example, their ideas, circumstances, viewpoint, dilemma. Structural question, where you ask participants how they organize their work, activities, for example. And the last, contrast question, where you ask participants what is meant by a specific terminology. So this is three different methods of interviewing. Then the last one is the focus group interviews, here where you also interview, but it is not individual, where you bring a set of people between 6 and 12 participants and share an experience, in common experience. So dates back to the 1940s, used to assess effectiveness of moral boosting radio shows. In 70s onward, they used to market researcher. Then in 80s onward, they used for academics. So it's new for us, and only in 1980s. Transcripts of description is the data, and here plus accompanying notes. Use the content analysis or grounded theory approach to analyze the data. So what are the strengths? The strength of interviews is that open-ended question and spontaneously deal with issues as they arise, and it is very cost-effective method because you are going to group directly 12 people, instead to each one individually. We spend maybe a whole day. Here you can gather them all and you do a focus group discussion for 2 hours, and less time consuming. But the weaknesses is sometimes from those 6 to 12, there is only 1 or 2 participants dominate the discussion. Others all they follow, or they don't have say and they don't participate. Another thing, you may have a conflict between 2 participants. One he believe in A, one believe in B, another one believe in C, and they start fighting. So here is your rule to manage that focus group discussion. Not done in natural setting, so a little observation to help understand the experience. So unless, actually the focus group discussion, most of the time we do it in conference hall or in an office, unless, maybe you want to do it in natural setting, but most of the time is no. So this will reduce, the observation method effectiveness. So also, what are approaches to data analysis? Qualitative researchers have developed several different methods of data analysis, and in this lecture, we'll provide 2 examples: ethnographic data analysis and grounded theory. Both approaches reflect the inductive strategy, which is typical to qualitative data analysis, and each shows that coding strategies facilitate the identification of themes in the data. So let's go for the first one, which is ethnographic data analysis. The ethnographer or the researcher integrates data analysis into the data collection process while in the field, as I say. While you are collecting the data, at the same time you are analyzing that data. This helps you to guide the participant and observations in the field. And while in the field, a researcher conduct four levels of analysis simultaneously. You have the domain analysis, taxonomic analysis, componential analysis, and team analysis. So we go one by one. What is domain analysis? You as a researcher is moving from observing a social situation, a set of behavior carried out by people in social situation, to discovering a cultural set. And this is, will be pure based on your observation. So cultural domain here, categories of meaning that include smaller categories. So you will strive to identify the semantic relationship in the observation made. For example, X is a kind of Y, X is the result of Y, then X is a part of Y. Something like you use that logic. And taxonomic analysis, it is more in-depth analysis in which the researcher is searching for a larger categories to which the domain may belongs. So from the first one, just now this domain analysis, when you're interviewing, you will get, I will call them, as just now we describe them, small categories or subcategories, or what we call them is the domain, which is better. So you may have so many domains. So what you will do is now you will try to put some of the domains, let's say 3, 4, 5, to one umbrella, and we call them category, a larger category. So a taxonomy is a set of categories organized on the basis of a single semantic relationship between A and B, and put it in a category. So the major difference, the taxonomy shows more relationship among things inside the cultural domain. So in domain, you put A, B, C, D. Now you put this on one umbrella and see what is the relationship between A and B, B and C, C and D, D and A. Then we go to the third compositional analysis, where here you look for contrast among the cultural categories in the domain. So a systematic research for attribute component of the culture associated with cultural categories as described by Spradley. So here we use, for example, the idea of male to explain. In our culture, we can classify our mail as junk mail, flyer, notice, etc. We put the bills also in one category, magazine in another category, personal letter in another category, because each cluster has an attribute that conveys the meaning, and this is not visible to someone from another culture. So you put these categories again in a larger umbrella, and maybe we call it as a team. So the team analysis. So again, cultural themes are recurrent patterns in data that are used to connect domains. So here themes are assertions that apply numerous situations and have a high degree of generality. So the theme is the larger. We start from the domain, then we go to the category. We explain the relationship between the domains. Then we go to a general category. We put some other categories and put them in a cluster. Then we develop those themes. So Spradley suggests a number of universal themes such as social conflict, cultural contradictions, informal techniques and social control, managing impersonal social relations, acquiring and maintaining status, solving problems, etc. So, as I say, I just give an example of that. When you do a research, you create this domain. Hunger, I don't have food, I don't go to school, I don't have clothes, it looks like dirty. So this all, then you put relationship between them, you bring another put them another cluster. For example, the theme is lack of financial resources. So another one, seek, not hygiene. Another category you put them under health. Then or lack of health. Another category, people they study on the street. Another domain, people study on the street. They don't have books. They don't go to school. You put another category, lack of education. So now you can see those, we put them as cluster. Now we come to the theme. These all of them, they will give you one meaning: poverty as a social problem. So from domains, categories, general category as a cluster, then we come out with a theme. So another approach, we call it constant comparison method. During data collection process, grounded theories here is more related to grounded theory. Yeah? Generate theory using the constant comparative method. For example, each piece of information is coded and compared to other pieces for similarity and differences. And here, things will come like when, for example, you have an interview, you will read line by line and you code. That's what we call code. Also, we can call them as a domain. But this is code, you call them code. And you see of that code if there is something similar. Steps in construct comparative method is concept formation, concept development, then concept modification and integration. Let's go for the first one, concept formation. So coding occurs at 3 levels. The first level of the coding, also called substantive code. Here, study the data line by line, as I told you, looking for the key process or similarities, codify the substance of the data, and substantive code use participant words. Someone is saying hungry, I don't have food, right? So we are putting hungry, doesn't have food, feel sick. Then the second level, condense level 1 code to assign categories of the code, which is also almost similar to the first one. But the first one, because based on observation, this based on mostly on interview. So you will come to take those codes, similar codes, and put them under one category. Now the level of type of the coding is identify the core variables or the basic social psychology process, or we call it BSP. And here means that from the categories we develop them, the general category or the general or the theme, or the team. So a core variable is one that focuses on theory and accounts for most of the variation in the patterns of behavior that is both relevant and problematic for a participant involved. So usually represent a little given to the teams that emerge from the data, and they are the process that occur over time and that involve changes over time. So after you have developed all you do your coding and you put them in the one umbrella or cluster as category, we come to the concept development. There are 3 steps here involved. Reduction, and here reduction means that we reduce, right? First we have, maybe you can generate 100 code, 200 code, which is a lot. So you compare each category of code to see if there are umbrella category under which several existing categories can be matched. So one identify theoretical linkage among the categories and collects them for more general categories. So after from 100, you reduce them to 50. Then from 50, you may find another umbrella or another general categories from 50 maybe to 25 or 20. Then second, selective sampling of the literature. So down to learn more about now the emerging concepts. So once you get this concept or category, sometimes now you will be based on literature to help you. Literature is considered as data also and used to fill the gap in the emerging theory. Here, literature, when you use it here, is not to compare your studying, but to help you to also develop those code and categories or themes. So it is also considered as data. So may add clarity to the theoretical description. So the third one and the last we call selective sampling of the data, and it done once the main concept has emerged. So you collect additional data in a selective manner to develop the hypothesis statement or tentative hypothesis to identify the properties of the main variables, or what we call them the theme or the concept, and to ensure saturation of categories. Means that when you are analyzing the data and developing those codes and categories, you make sure that there is no more code image, no more category image, no more theme image. Otherwise, you have not finished yet. You have to go back to the field and collect more data. Researchers stop collecting new data when satisfied that they are not hearing anything new about the category or hypothesis. At this stage, as I say, the category variables will emerge. Then we come to concept modification and integration, which is a theoretical coding done to form a theoretical linkage between categories. After you develop all the categories now, you must explain that link between them, the relationship between those categories. And here, so based on Sperley, there is 18 families of theoretical codes. We will give 3 examples. The consequence family, for example, 6 C's like cause, context, contingencies, consequences, covariances, and condition. He also gave interactive family like mutual effect, reciprocity, mutual trajectory, mutual interdependence, interactions of the effect, and covariance. And we have strategy family, for example, strategies, tactics, mechanism, manipulations, maneuvering, dealing with, handling techniques, ploys, means, goals. So you will come to that, explain relationship, for example, between these categories that are developed. So theoretical memory is where there are the researchers' ideas about the code and categories and relationship among them. So now you will put what are the domain or what are the code, what are the categories developed from the code, and what is the relationship between these categories. That will explain. So you have 3 rules here. To raise the data to a conceptual level, so this relationship between categories, they should give you a meaning. They should give you something, to form a conceptual understanding. To develop properties of each category, what each category means, how the relationship between this category A and B, and to generalize hypotheses about relationship between them. So what are advantages and limitations here? It's focused on the whole of the human experience and the meaning ascribed by them by participants. This is one of the advantages. And they provide the researcher with a deep insight that would not be possible using quantitative method. Quantitative method, usually we identify factors, effect, or something like that. But actually, we cannot answer the question how and why. We just, mainly answer the question what. What is the effect? What is the relationship? But how this and why it is like that, it should be using a qualitative research. The major strength of qualitative work is the validity of the data it produces, because the data is genuine. You yourself as a researcher, you gather that data and it is reliable and valid. But in quantitative, sometimes the data, especially that collected from different methodologies, from different approaches, there is some questions or some concerns about the validity or reliability of the data. So participants' true reality is likely to be reflected, because those experiences or those participants, they will tell you their real experiences, their real life, their real culture. But the major limitation is it perceived lack of objectivity and generalizability. Objectivity, sometimes you could be a bias. You as a researcher, you interfere in that description of the data and analysis of the data. You may drive respondent to weigh that should not be. And here researcher become the research tool and may lack objectivity, as I say, because you believe in something. When you ask question, you try to drive those participants to that particular line, and here you will have some lack of objectivity, or we are being biased. And here also we can use mixed methodologies. We put the emphasis on problem, not on the method. So many combinations found in a broad range of research topics. For example, an experiment with a questionnaire, field study with experiment, or a questionnaire, we mean interview. Interviews also with a questionnaire, and participant observation with an experiment. Also, you can include using both qualitative and quantitative methods of measurement in a single study. That we'll discuss about it maybe later in coming lectures. So to here, I come to the end of the class. I hope that you understand the logic behind qualitative research. I make it short because also I want to give you a general idea about what is qualitative. And I know that in order to go in depth analysis of qualitative, we need more than one lecture class, because the domain or the coding and developing the teams and the categories is a complex. I explained the concept here, but actually to do it in reality we need a lot of exercises, in class, and it should be in a physical way so that we can understand it. But at least now you understand the concept. The second thing why I make it short is that because most of you that when doing your FYP, they are not going to do qualitative, because qualitative takes from you a long time, and in your FYP maximum you have 2 trimesters to do it. So most of you are going to do on quantitative. So that I start with quantitative, then after that we start with quantitative. Then in quantitative research method, we will have a lot of explanation. We will do everything from data collection, from questionnaires, data analysis, discussion. For that reason, why I make this lecture a bit short. Anyway, thank you very much. If you still have any comment, you still have any question, feel free to contact me via email, or to have a comment down in the comment space. So I will see you for the next lecture recording, and have a nice day. Thanks.